What's going on, people? Welcome back to Curtis Shaw TV, back with another transfer special. The window's open. Arsenal fans want to know what's happening and who we're signing. And only right that I bring Ben Jacobs on. He's loving life over there in New York at the Club World Cup at the moment. How are you, Ben?
Very well. We're recording just before the Club World Cup finals. So I'm in New York, Chelsea against PSG. And some Chelsea news, of course, we'll speak about, no doubt, Noni Madueke in a little bit. But
Yeah,
Arsenal's window really feels like it's getting going.
it is. Just wanted to ask you quickly, how is it at the Club World Cup? Because I know people were skeptical at the start, and I think from a viewing point of view, I think the tournament has got better as it's gone on, to be honest. So how's the feeling over there?
Yeah, I think that's the case with many major tournaments. So if a World Cup, as it advances, feels more intense, you'd expect the same from a Club World Cup as well. And the money on offer is great for the clubs. Chelsea have
Yeah.
made, at the time we're live, around 80 million, and it will be 87.5 million if they win the tournament. You've got the Conference League winners against the Champions League winners. But
Yeah,
maybe if
true.
we're thinking about the repercussions, we won't know the true success of the tournament until 12 months' time, when we
Yeah.
understand what the workload and burden is on the players, and then what kind of learnings can be preempted now ahead of the World Cup, particularly regarding logistics, travel, weather, attendances, ticket pricing. All of these things, I think, will be discussed. But you have to say, from FIFA's perspective, they will laud it as a success, even though
Yeah.
Jurgen Klopp said it's the worst idea ever invented. And Gianni Infantino and Arsene Wenger, when I've spoken to them during this tournament, have kind of refuted that and said the gauge of a tournament is whether the people attending and watching it like it. There's a
Yeah.
40,000 average attendance, which is not bad, even though these were big NFL stadiums that could have held double that capacity. And I think crucially for FIFA, you had a scenario where one or two of the non UEFA entrants either went very far or got big wins. Two Brazilian teams beating the two finalists, Botafogo 1-0 against PSG, Flamengo 3-1 against Chelsea. So that's a bit of a coup
Yeah.
for Brazil, or even more widely, South American football. Al Hilal knocked out Manchester City. Fluminense made the semi-finals. So everyone perhaps presumed it would just be a bigger version, but with the same end result as the old Club World Cup formats, where
Yeah.
the UEFA teams swanned up, strided through to the final without much real friction or competition. And then from there, it all felt a bit predictable. We do have two UEFA entrants in the final. That part probably is predictable, but we've had our upsets along the way as well. And I don't think many before a ball was kicked would have even necessarily thought that Chelsea would be one of the two UEFA entrants in the final. So it's been a fascinating tournament to be at, a bit of a dress rehearsal ahead of the World Cup. And I can understand why those who are not here, clubs or fans, including Arsenal, may criticise it from afar. But I can also empathise with why FIFA's overall conclusion, as Gianni Infantino said earlier today, is that this tournament has been a, quote, huge success.
Yeah. No, I can see where he thinks that. I think it's definitely worked. But as you said, the effects, the knock-on effects, we'll see throughout the season with the fitness. Um, let's talk Arsenal. I mean, do you know what? Ever since me and you have done shows, I think the first thing I always say is Ben, when are we gonna sign a striker? I'm hoping that soap opera finishes this summer and I can settle down and see this striker score loads of goals, but we're still not there yet. I mean, Victor Gyokeres last Sunday, you and Fabrizio and everyone was tweeting. I said, "Yeah, we're close. It's nearly happening." And we're sitting here about a week later, and
Mm.
the sporting president is saying this behavior does not get him closer to a move. He's on strike. He's missed training. He's missed the tour. Berta flew to Portugal, came back without him. The question that every Arsenal fan is asking, and I know it sounds very simple, is why will Arsenal not just pay that extra 5 million euros and get the player? What do you think is going on here, and why are Arsenal maybe stalling the deal at this stage?
Yeah, I think it's not just about 5 million euros. It's about the structure of the deal, the payment terms, and all of these things. But the parties are, it's true, not that far apart. And the Arsenal way is to protect their position in the market. So Andrea Berta's no pushover. He's not going to want to go up and get the deal over the line quickly just to weaken positions in the market for future deals where maybe other teams will say, we'll just play the same kind of tactic as well, be really bullish, not sign off on the deal, see if they go a little bit higher. And Arsenal did that under Edu as well. So that's probably one factor, especially for Bertrand in his first Arsenal window, to try and get these deals done on his term. The second thing is that we're very early in the window. So, of course, you want that number 9 to come in today, tomorrow. But whether it proves to be a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday doesn't make that much difference. Perhaps in a week's time or so, with everyone back and pre-season tours starting and all of this, it's a different situation. But that's maybe one theory as to what's going on. Then the other thing is we have more clarity in the sense that they tried Francesco, put in all the legwork. Leipzig didn't come down to 70 million euros. Berta flew out to Portugal. They escalated the Gyokeres situation. And now we know that that is the one that they're trying to finalise. So it's not really a either or debate. Victor Gyokeres said yes to Arsenal. He's agreed a 5-year deal. He's going on strike. He's waiting for the move. And now it's just a bit of a game between clubs. And actually, we saw this, you may remember, in that January with Moises Caicedo and Arsenal as well, where it looked like the player was going to force his way out of the club. He effectively went on a mini strike. He issued a public statement, and that was the Arsenal bid, not the Chelsea one at that point, and the move didn't come off. My expectation is still that this will be the opposite and that Gyokeres is still more likely to join Arsenal than not. Berta flew out there last weekend, held face-to-face talks. They made what I'm told a second bid, but a first formal one, having made a verbal offer. And it was in and around the 75, 80 million euros mark, with around 65 million euros guaranteed. And Sporting said, no way, it's 70 plus 10. So yes, when you spell it out like that, you can say they're only 5 million apart on the fixed fee, but you've also got to understand the payment terms and all of the other trappings behind the deal. Then Gyokeres was told he could have more extended time off than the bulk of the Sporting squad, and that his return date was today, Saturday, 12th of July. And Gyokeres, as we were led to believe from sources, was always just going to stay at home, go on strike. So no real surprise that he didn't turn up to training. And this morning I reported it was a key day in the saga. Why? Because Sporting sensed that this was the direction of travel and were going to act to try and keep the ascendancy in the deal. Hence the statement from the Sporting president, Federico Varandes, who said the club's calm. They'll fine him and keep him if they need to, as long as he apologises to the group. And then turned it a bit on Arsenal and said they have to pay the fair market value, adding, if the geniuses who are devising this strategy think that this puts pressure on me to make it easier for him to leave, they're basically mistaken. And that's the most fascinating thing now, because it's not only about Arsenal going up 5 million, because Sporting are not happy with Gyokeres, and therefore they could be a little bit more difficult to deal with. This is a game of cat and mouse where Arsenal's perspective was to leave on Sunday on their own terms, knowing that Gyokeres would play ball, in the hope they would get the deal how they wanted it and quickly, because Sporting don't want to be in this situation where their best player last season is effectively falling out publicly with the club. And who's to say that Gyokeres won't make a counter statement now? So it was quite a smart tactic in many ways, because when a player wants out and it's getting this tumultuous, you often will get the deal that you're looking for and quickly. And that's why I think Arsenal were waiting. And Sporting sensed that. So now they've come out publicly and said, Arsenal can't do that. If they think that's the way to getting their terms and their deal, we're going to dig in our heels a little bit further. But both parties seem to be grandstanding at the moment. And I would still expect a breakthrough in negotiation soon. We might get a few twists and turns first. We might get a little bit of Arsenal have got another target. We might get a little bit of Gyokeres is only for sale now, back at his release clause. But at the end of the day, I think all parties will end up meeting halfway, simply because Gyokeres only wants Arsenal, and it really doesn't suit Gyokeres, Sporting or Arsenal to be in this very public and very dramatic situation.
Yeah, because I mean, from like an ex-player's point of view, I'm looking at Gyokeres' situation now, thinking he's doing everything he can, and he'll be getting a lot of criticism, I'm sure, for this, for going, on strike, and people maybe will feel let down by him. But at the same time, if I was in his position, I'd almost be thinking, "Come on, Arsenal, just get me out of this situation. I'm doing everything I can do to sign for you. I need you to get this deal over the line because." Do we need to buy him more, or does Sporting need to sell him? I think we've got the greater need at the end of the day.
Yeah, possibly, but the greater need today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's the part that doesn't make the difference. So it may well be that Arsenal are thinking our plan A is to see if in the next few days we can get exactly the deal we're looking for, and our plan B is just to pay the extra 5 million and get the deal done. So they can have both options. We're not talking about deadline day. We're not talking about a week out from the Premier League season. So Arsenal are well within their rights to try and keep their ascendancy in this negotiation. And it may not just be about 5 million either. It could be about how gettable the add-ons are. It could be about the payment terms. But what I know is that on Sunday night, the deal was in its final stages. And the suggestion, therefore, is that the ballpark valuation, there is an agreement between the clubs. The structure of the deal, there isn't. Sporting adamant that they want the fixed fee to start with a 7. Arsenal's original starting point when they made their first verbal offer was the whole thing would only be worth 70 million. Of course, that was going to be their first offer, because when you know that there was this pact of effectively 60 plus 10 or 70 million euros in whatever structure you agree on, you're going to try that because maybe Sporting publicly would say, we're not selling him for that number. But privately, if you're aware of the pact, that's your starting point. Then you go up a little bit, 65 plus 10 or 15. I think Arsenal's formal offer was in and around the 80 million euros, maybe a fraction south of that, gets rejected, and suddenly the goalposts move, and we go from a 70 million package to 70 million fixed fee plus add-ons. Maybe there's things like sell-on clauses that we don't yet know about, and all of these things are complicating the negotiation. But there's kind of two things going on here. One is the war of words in the media, and the other is an allegedly calm Sporting as per their statement, and a definitely calm Arsenal and Andrea Berta, because he's been in these kind of situations many, many times before. He's an expert negotiator, and he will know when the right time in the market is to move. And it would still be a surprise if Arsenal just walk away. You hear a lot of talk of the deal's off, it's gone silent, and yet everything is still advanced. And I think we're seeing grandstanding from all sides. And as I said before, I think Arsenal's perspective will just be they don't need to cave to this. They don't even need to get involved between Gyokeres and Sporting because they've agreed terms with the player. They know he wants to move. So they can just wait and let it play out a little bit between a player on strike and a club that are saying they're not even obliged to sell. But every single day this goes on and Gyokeres doesn't turn up to Sporting training, the fan base get involved, the media get involved. And in many ways, despite what the Sporting statement says, Arsenal's position to negotiate gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's why today was a key day, because now it's all starting to snowball. And I still think all parties will want a resolution before this coming week is out.
Yeah, we definitely want that resolution as the fan base, that's for sure. One player where it looks like we have found a resolution, and it was a little bit controversial when it came out. Some of the stuff that came out from the fan base was way over the top. Some of the criticism that this player got, but Noni Madueke looks like he'll be signing for Arsenal pretty quickly. Looks like he's flown back to do his medical. And I think this is where the Arsenal fans are like, we heard about Madueke a week or so ago. Now he's having his medical. We've known about Gyokeres for months. We always wonder how come when it's us and Chelsea, we seem to just get it dealt with quickly. I think the fans were a little bit, why do we keep buying Chelsea players? Arteta signed 6 Chelsea players in 6 seasons. What's your thoughts on the Madueke deal? And I know obviously you know a little bit about Chelsea as well as Arsenal. Were they, because it seems like they let him go. Maresca seemed like, look, he doesn't want to be here. We won't stand in his way. What's your understanding of the deal and how it came about?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, it says recording resumed. Shall I go now?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slightly different situation when you're dealing club to club in England compared to with Sporting. The challenge with the Gyokeres saga is, first of all, the actual transfer fee will be declared. That's an obligation for Sportings. There's no hiding from what that deal is. That can lead to a tough negotiation. And there's a release clause as well. So if a club wants to be bullish, they can start at that high number and you've got to work your way backwards. Arsenal and Chelsea got a strong relationship. No release clause for Noni Madueke. I don't think the breakdown of the fee will necessarily be out there. And if it is, then both clubs may have a different perspective. Chelsea feel they've got their number starting with a 5. Arsenal will no doubt argue that the fixed part of the fee is below 50 million. And in the end, it was just a deal that suited all parties. And I understand why Arsenal fans will see the volume of business from Chelsea and maybe feel a little bit underwhelmed. But what I would say is, if you look at now, Kai Havertz could improve season on season still. Jorginho, I feel, was very effective for Arsenal. Kepa was once the world's most expensive goalkeeper. And Noni Madueke wanted this Arsenal move. We're not talking about a scenario where Chelsea really forced him out. And that was why the player agreed terms first. And then from there, when Chelsea found that out, they decided, okay, we're not going to have him feature as much in the Club World Cup because they realised that talks were advanced. And when you think of the outlay, of course, there's a quickness to the deal coupled with the high valuation. And some fans may say, put that money on Gyokeres, put that money on Rodrygo, put that money on Eze. Who's to say that some of those players still won't arrive? But with Madueke, the appeal of the move is down to the fact that in a World Cup year, he feels he can get minutes because of Saka's workload. He wants to play on the right-hand side, but is capable of moving over to the left. And therefore, it kind of works for everybody. Had he stayed at Chelsea, he'd have had Pedro Neto, possibly Esteval, Willian, even Cole Palmer might be moved over to that right-hand side if Esteval ends up playing centrally over the course of the coming years. So I think Madueke felt he'd fallen down the pecking order on the right. And then on the left-hand side, Jamie Gittins had obviously arrived and Giovanni Quenda's coming in a year's time. So it's a chance for him to get minutes. And I think Arsenal fans will be surprised because Enzo Maresca really liked Noni Madueke. And if you look back at the first 10, 15 games, particularly matches like Chelsea's away win at Wolves, you see what Madueke is all about. He's dynamic, he's explosive, he's deceptive. He can look a little bit kind of lanky and uncoordinated at times, but so were players like JJ Okocha and Tina Asprilla, and they just found a way to kind of dribble with flair, but sometimes bedazzle and confuse you because the footwork is a bit unorthodox. And he's a touchline hugging winger that can also provide wide forward output. And this is what Mikel Arteta sees. And now the key question is obviously, is it Madueke to go right and left? Or is it actually Madueke plus Eze central and he can move left? Plus maybe a departure of Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, and then a big name starting left winger coming in, all in addition to this number 9. And if that is the collective frontline business, a central attacker, a number 9 and Madueke, or those 3 and a left winger, then I think Arsenal fans will feel a lot more reassured and excited about the season ahead. Whereas because the order of the deals, it once again feels like they went for a 9, but they got Zubamendi. They went for a 9, but they got Norgard. They went for a 9, but they got a right winger. They went for a 9, but they're going for an attacking midfielder. They went for a 9, but maybe now they'll work on a big name left winger. Finally, that number 9 will arrive. And all of this is before a ball is kicked. So there's no cause for panic. And then maybe Arsenal fans will feel a little bit more confident about the season ahead. But it's not the order you do the deals in, it's which ones you get over the line by the time either the season starts or the window closes. And having seen a lot of Madueke, I actually still think he could be a really good player in this Arsenal team.
I mean, I really hope so. The comparisons to JJ Okocha, that's high praise because I remember JJ Okocha flicking the ball over Ray Parler's head. He was some player. I have to say, with the Havertz deal, I think the fans are still feel like we got the raw end of that deal.
Yeah,
He
the price was
improved,
high.
but the price was very, and the wage as well was, he's our highest paid player. But listen, we've just got to wait and see what happens with Madueke. That's, I suppose he's just got to have a chance and hopefully prove people wrong. You mentioned Eze there. And again, Arsenal fans, we're like, look, there's a release clause, pay it. He wants to join us. We've seen Gibbs White, Tottenham. I know that's complicated at the moment, but it looked like they triggered that release clause. However they got to that situation, maybe we don't know. But Arsenal fans are sort of like, go and get Eze, go and get like Rodrygo links have been there as well. But in terms of Eze, what is your thoughts on that? What's the latest on that? A lot of reports saying that Arsenal are now going to approach Steve Parish, try and work on a structured deal. Is this a deal that could have a positive outcome for Arsenal? And I also saw, by the way, that they didn't put him in their photo shoot for their new home kit.
Sometimes that is a clue. Arsenal fans are great at finding those clues as well. Yeah. So, as I broke, Eberechi Eze is a leading Arsenal target. They want to add an attacking midfielder plus a winger. And we don't know whether Madueke is the only winger now or whether there's room for two. But they've held positive talks with the Eze camp and they know that he wants the move. Tottenham are not working on the deal. They may still get Morgan Gibbs-White over the line. But even if that fell through and Tottenham decided to pursue Eze, the feeling is that Eze is open to Arsenal, not Spurs. But it's not really a North London head-to-head now. It perhaps was anticipated to be at one point, but it's still a relatively clear run for Arsenal at this stage. And my expectation is that they will approach Crystal Palace and start understanding first, can they go in lower or different, at least, to the release clause? Or is this a release clause or nothing deal? Right now, the timing isn't perfect. So again, when people wonder about inaction, often that's a sign of a club understanding when is the right time to stand a chance of success and when is the wrong time. And Steve Parish is in New York at the moment. Palace are holding emergency meetings with their legal team. They're trying to resolve their next step to get back into the Europa League. So to go now and say, here's a bid for Eze, you're likely to be told, if you want to play it that way, then trigger the release clause. Otherwise, we're not engaging with you. If you leave it a few days and allow Steve Parish to come back and Palace to know where they stand, that will be respected by Crystal Palace. And similarly, if you want to trigger this release clause, a bit like Nottingham Forest are claiming with Morgan Gibbs-White, you got to go through the front door. You got to deal with Palace first. You've got to express your interests. It was the same with Michael Elise's clause. So this is not always about Arsenal not doing anything or being slow. Sometimes it's just the complexity of the target results in you having to wait a little bit and be patient. So Gyokeres isn't just Arsenal clicking their heels. It's Sporting being incredibly tough negotiators and reneging on a pact. Rodrygo, if they go, can't be decided until the players met Xabi Alonso. He's on holiday at the moment. Eze, they've met the player, but they perhaps don't feel that last week was the right time or this weekend to deal with Crystal Palace. But my expectation is that some form of approach will come in. And then it will all depend if they make a bid as to whether Palace go release clause or nothing, or they're open to a different kind of negotiation. But I do think there's a fair chance in the coming days or weeks, this Eze story really starts to move. Then with the left winger, if it isn't to be Rodrygo, we know that they've looked, for example, at Anthony Gordon. There's been some kind of discussion over Rafa Leao before Jamie Gittins went to Chelsea. They were talking about him as well, but they didn't want to bid and enter that race. So there are left-sided options, but if it is to be Madueke, Eze, a left winger and a number 9, because of the outlay and how many attack-minded players you're bringing into that front line, I come back to what I said before. I still think Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard would have to leave the club. And we might have said it on another show, but I'll reiterate it if not. My understanding is that it's an all or nothing type situation with both Martinelli and Trossard. So Arsenal, even though it seems a bit paradoxical, simultaneously exploring contract renewal whilst being open to a sale. And what they don't want is that middle ground where they just let another year come off the contract, lose a little bit of the value, and then end up having a departure. So I think by the end of the window, or if it's the direction of travel and they can wait a little bit longer because renewals are less urgent than selling. But if they get to the late part of this window and they still don't have clarity over, are we extending Trossard or are we selling him? Are we extending Martinelli or are we selling him? I think then they'll be very disappointed. So I think we'll get a clearer direction of travel with one or both of those very soon. And then obviously if either points towards an exit, you start to think they might go really big on a left winger. And that's when the Madueke signing becomes even more fascinating, because if the player knows that he's a Saka backup on as well, then his game time won't be as pivotal or big as maybe he was first anticipating. So we'll have to wait and see what direction of travel Arsenal move in.
Yeah. And just finally, Rodrygo, obviously over there with Real Madrid, big left winger, very limited minutes during this tournament. And a lot of Arsenal fans, every time he's on the bench, are going, they're going to let him go. Do you think there's any possibility of him going? We've seen reports that Madrid wouldn't stand in his way, but maybe the player doesn't want to go. What's your feelings on Rodrygo?
Yeah, Rodrygo's on holiday at the moment, and when he gets back, he's going to have a conversation with Xabi Alonso about his future, and then the player will make a determination. And as you say, the Real Madrid perspective is they're open to a sale. So it's more about Rodrygo. Is he going to communicate to Real Madrid he wants to leave, or is he going to stay a little bit longer and try and change the manager's mind? And the challenge for Rodrygo is that he's playing on the right. He wants to play on the left. Kylian Mbappe, Vinny Jr. on the left. Whereas if he moved to Arsenal or any other club, he'd become a starting left winger, which may prove to be the player's preference. Then we hear some reports that 100 million euros or more is the price tag. I'm told that number's closer to 90 million euros that Real would be prepared to sanction a sale at. So you would think Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard would have to leave, and then Arsenal would have to decide, are we going to persist with Madueke, Wanyeri if that new deal is signed, and Saka, and then move over Madueke to the left if there is need, and there might not be if both Martinelli and Trossard stay. And then if Eberechi Eze comes in, who feels more of a realistic target and a concrete one at this stage than Rodrygo, he could go out to the left-hand side, even though, again, his preference is through the centre. But it shows you that you've got options. I think the challenge, as I said in my last answer, is if Madueke's pitch has been you're going to get minutes, and then a box office left winger comes, then he becomes a squad player at best. And he may feel like the whole Arsenal appeal is in being the person that can go right to left. So there is a possibility that if they persist with Martinelli and Trossard, they go Madueke, a central attacker, with Eze being a very realistic target, but they might have to pay or match the release clause, and then a number 9. Alternatively, if Trossard or Martinelli go, then can they invest big funds into that left-hand side? And that's where the likes of Rodrygo, Rafa Leao, Anthony Gordon all come in. And I think the determination will very much be about that squad chemistry. And Mikel Arteta will probably have a say here as opposed to finances alone. Because I'm under the impression now we're in the new financial year that Arsenal can basically spend what Liverpool have spent. They may have to structure it in a way that protects them long run with PSR. But I don't think we're in a situation where if you add up Rodrygo, plus let's just call it Gyokeres, plus Eze, plus Madueke, Mosquera is still a player they think they can get, Zubimendi, Norgard, Kepa, maybe a left back. I don't think there's fears, even though that total amount might even get in excess of £300 million, that these are not deals in this window that Arsenal can do, as long as they're structured correctly. And there may be outgoings, of course, and there would be if they sign Rodrygo, that kind of offset that type of spend. And this is why I think Arsenal's window can now get going. And it's that old tortoise and the hare, that just because Liverpool are fast out the blocks and so are City and Chelsea because of the Club World Cup, it doesn't mean Arsenal are slow. And the difference that people forget between Liverpool and Arsenal is Liverpool closed their financial year on May the 31st because they feel confident and compliant with PSR. So they don't utilize the early part of the window to bring in needed funds to secure their financial stability and then move into July and say it's a new financial year. They say, let's shut the financial year on May the 31st. So as soon as you get into early June, they're already in the new financial year, because you can close your financial year in late May or even potentially beyond this so-called 30th of June PSR deadline. My club, Leicester City, dodged a points deduction by closing their financial year at the end of July. So this PSR deadline is soft and a little bit of a myth, at least in terms of when the date is. But the reality is Arsenal closed their financial accounting on the 30th of June. So they were always going to get moving with the bulk of their business in July. Liverpool closed on May the 31st. They were always going to try and get moving in the month of June. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both approaches. But just because Liverpool have gone early out the blocks with fantastic business, it doesn't mean by the end of the window that Arsenal's total spend, volume of business, cleaning house if they need players to go, it still doesn't mean that all that won't get done to the same degree and volume and ambition and excitement and improvement and quality as Liverpool, as City, who have had a good window, and Chelsea. So there is a feeling at the moment of Arsenal are stuck in a perennial loop of getting everything except the positions that they actually need. But the good news is that who else has bid for Eze? Nobody. Who else has bid for Gyokeres? Nobody. Who else has bid for Šeško? Nobody. Who else has bid for Anthony Gordon, Rodrygo, or Rafa Leao? Nobody. Who else has bid for Mosquera? Nobody. So we haven't actually had a situation, to my knowledge, where Arsenal have gone all in on a player and lost out to another club. And I think, like I said in my first answer, if you get a situation where you've got more of a clear path towards the player and nobody else is coming in, and nobody's bidding for these players, even though people are baffled how Alanga can go quickly, Gibbs White potentially can go quickly. Why is no one even putting the offers for some of these other players? It may be because there's that intel of players on holiday. Player doesn't want to engage now. The club don't want to engage now. The timing isn't right. The price is too high now, but it will drop in a few weeks' time. Maybe there's a release clause in some cases that is only active in the month of July. So you wait. Maybe you're playing a bit of a game to knock the price down, which feels like it's happening with the Gyokeres. So there's all of these considerations that are not kind of sexy and are not spoken about, but that context is vital. Whereas if you just bid, then you look like you're busy, but you'd actually probably perversely have less chance of success because you're bidding at the wrong time. You're bidding too quickly between bids if you're not successful. And then the selling club just goes, great, these guys are coming back with an offer every day. We'll just keep saying no 5 times until eventually they're miles above the original valuation they want to pay. And that was kind of the Manchester United problem before Jim Ratcliffe came in. So Arsenal are disciplined, Arsenal are meticulous. And if it was a case where they were losing out on targets because other clubs were getting deals done, you'd say fine, but they're not. They've got all their targets. I'm not aware that any of these targets are being hijacked by anyone else at this point. And that is why I think they're taking their time, coupled with the fact that the financial year for them only started at the beginning of July.
Do you know the thing, Ben? I think from an Arsenal point of view, the problem we've had is we've seen targets over the years where it looks like we're going to get them and the window closes and we don't get them. I mean, I remember Vardy from you. He was at the training ground and we still never did that deal. So, you know, I love all that.
For Mahrez as well.
Mahrez and Golo Kante, they didn't want to pay his agent's fee and then they signed Xhaka instead. So
yeah, well, I think they're just a bit burned. Like, it's coming back to the Madueke thing, even though actually Arsenal fans would probably be quite glad it didn't happen. But the Mudryk saga, when he was a 100 million euros player, sort of summed up the frustration in the Arsenal fan base, because it was a case of, we're the favourites, the player wants us, the player's saying publicly he wants us. I did an exclusive interview with Mudryk. He said, I can't say no to Arsenal. He was teasing Arsenal on social media. He was following Arsenal players on social media. He was speaking to Zinchenko, and Arsenal were basically at the 90, 95 million package. And then Chelsea come in and offer 100. Arsenal don't match it. He's on a private jet to Chelsea. And Arsenal fans think, so they just pay what it takes because they want the player. And we dilly-dally with 3 bids only going up incrementally. And we try and haggle over pennies in 100 million euros deal. And we lose out on the player. But the flip side of that is sometimes you invest big in these players and they don't work out. And you're glad that you stuck to your valuation. Sometimes you stick to your valuation and it means that you get another player at that valuation. So that's the kind of last point that I'd make. 5 million extra for Gyokeres might mean 5 million extra for Mosquera and for Eze and for Rodrygo. And before you know it, you don't have the budget. I know, pay it, because we're not the ones controlling the purse strings. We're not the ones thinking about PSR. But if you look at other business and take the Arsenal angle or passion out of it, what are Brentford saying for Brian and Mbeumo? They're saying we want the same fixed fee as Mateus Cunha. What were Chelsea saying for Noni Madueke? They were saying we want a similar number to Anthony Elanga. So this again is the issue, that the more business that gets done, the more yardsticks of valuation you've got. And again, Arsenal fans just be listening to this going, we just want the players. We don't want the context. We don't want the explanation. We don't want the ins and outs of the negotiation. But you've got to understand that even if you don't realize it's the reason why at the end of the window you've got all your business done, a key part as to why it may be financially possible is because if you can stick to your rigid approach in negotiations, you might be saving that 5 million on 4 or 5 different targets, and that might open the door to signing another 20-25 million player that could make the difference in terms of your squad depth and your season. So it's not what Arsenal fans want to hear, but I do think it's important people understand this isn't just about reach into your back pocket and pay another 5 million. This is also an aspect of it's very early in the window, and Arsenal want to protect their position in the market and their reputation as being very thorough and disciplined negotiators.
Yeah. I mean, let's see what happens and how it develops. I hope over the next week that we see some development. Obviously, Arsenal are going on tour next weekend to Singapore, so it'd be nice to see, I don't know, maybe a Gyokeres on that plane. But
like that one big name. I mean, because there has been volume of business. That's the irony. I think if you think of Kepa, Norgard, Zubimendi, Madueke, not many Premier League teams will have spent that cumulative total and brought in 4 senior players through the door. They're just not the right order, the right priority positions, or the right profiles. If we were saying they've got Gyokeres, Eze, and Rodrygo, then in 2 weeks' time they were taking their time over Madueke, Norgard, Zubimendi, and Kepa, then the Arsenal fan base would be like, we're really excited for the new season ahead. So once again, you judge your window when the window shuts, or you judge the window based on who's in your squad come the first Premier League game of the season. So if they don't have a number 9 by 17th of August or whenever their first game is in that weekend, then you start to think they actually have failed, because quite clearly with some targets, they'll be looking at the whole window. But with other targets, they'll be saying we need these by game 1 of the Premier League season at the very worst. And it's crystal clear that if they don't have a new number 9 in that week before the first game of the Premier League season, they'll be behind on their schedule to get it, and they will be extremely disappointed. But I don't think we'll have to wait too long, personally, for the Gyokeres situation to resolve itself.
I really hope not. I'm hoping the next time I do a show with you, we've got a number 9. I don't even have to talk about a striker. We can just talk about more left backs and goalkeepers, because Arteta seems to love left backs every summer. But anyway, Leicester, just quickly, are you going to win the championship, come straight back up, or?
It's hard to tell, because
tough,
we are a very unpredictable team at the moment. And I think the reason for that is because Jamie Vardy's gone. It's a little bit of a changing of the guard. As I revealed, Marty Cifuentes is set to be the Leicester City manager. He's agreed terms. Bit of a mixed reception for him. Some fans wanted Dyche, safe pair of hands. Others wanted Danny Roll. Leicester didn't want to pay the compensation there. We might lose Wilfred and Didi because he's got a relegation release clause of 9 million. He'd be a really effective and top player in the championship. So I don't think it's a guarantee that Leicester return. And what I think we need is to go out there and find a proven, even if it's championship goal scorer, that's just going to fly with that 15, 20 goals, which is usually enough to put you in the promotion picture. And then if they go back up, they can always buy a more established striker that's got a bit more Premier League experience. But I think we really need to recruit, as pessimistic as it sounds, to be a top championship side with championship know-how, get back up. And then you see it with Sunderland, for example. This is a great example. They're suddenly in a position where they can get 4, 5, 6 flagship signings. Forest did it when they first came up. They made about 23 first team signings. So they bought one squad to come up, and then they bought another squad when they were up. And I think Leicester might kind of have to go down that direction, because there's 2 rebuilds needed. One is replacing some of the older players to make sure that you're good enough to come up. And then if they are good enough to come up, they'll need to spend even more money to make sure they can stay up.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Ben, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a tricky show with your internet in the hotel, but we got there in the end. Appreciate you giving up your time, and enjoy the Club World Cup final. I think it will be a very good game, an exciting game as well. And then hopefully on the next show, maybe we'll have that striker. You never know.
Look forward to it. Keep up the good work. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Make sure people follow Ben Jacobs online. Keep up to date with all the latest news. And I'll see you all soon, people.